I tend to shy away from superlatives when I'm talking about games. I've played over 10,000 of them in my life, so things like best and worst are really fuzzy concepts. When I made a video on the PS1 game Spectral Tower, for example, I called it one of the worst, because off the top of my head I could think of about a dozen RPGs that were bad on a similar level. The concept of best and worst is just too subjective, too squirrely, too shifting from day to day. I'm bringing this up because there are a large number of people who point to Energy as the worst game on the PC Engine. I'm not going to say that. In fact, it'd be kind of disappointing if the nadir of the system was only 44 games in. But Energy is a game that's mentioned in the same breath as things like Takeshi no Chosenjo, or Transformers Convoy no Nazo. Games that are notorious for just how awful they are. Energy is loosely based on a computer game called Ash. A game so obscure, I couldn't even get footage of it to show you, just the intro sequence. Quasarsoft developed Ash, and then made Energy as a consoleized remake. If you're not familiar with Quasarsoft, that's because they published 3 very obscure action-adventure titles for computers, then developed Energy, and went out of business. At least one of their earlier titles, Legend, seems to be built on the same game engine as Ash, and thus later Energy. So if you really like Energy for some reason, well, there's 2 more games out there. The plot of the game is that a major earthquake has struck the Shinjuku area of Tokyo, and it's become a kind of demon city as a result. A pack of psychics from the Demon Slayer Corps go into Shinjuku to try to rescue people, but they disappear, leaving only the youngest member, who will have to follow them in and try to save them. All this is recounted in a very long intro sequence that is unskippable. At the end of the intro, you encounter the first major problem with Energy. In dialogue sequences, you need to hit button 1 to advance, but it only registers you hitting button 1 about 1/4 of the time. You really have to press and hold to make sure that you advance to the next line of dialogue. It's the kind of thing that really makes you wonder if the controller's broken. Next, you have to enter your character's name, which also has a weirdly delayed response to your inputs. And then finally, you're in the game itself. Energy is a side-view action game that progresses in the method commonly called flip screen, where the action all takes place in the single box of the screen, and then when you go off the edge, your view moves to a corresponding location that would be 1 screen further in that direction. Button 1 jumps and button 2 fires your Psychic Blast. Shooting a Psychic Blast drains your ESP meter, though you really can barely tell. Later on in the game, when you get high-speed shots and more draining methods of attacking, then you might really see this start to go down, but it recharges so fast that it generally doesn't make a difference. On a lot of screens, the monsters just respawn indefinitely, so you might as well move through those without fighting anything. In other places, giant blocks will appear to block your exit until you clear away all the monsters. Except, the way that these are triggered is when you move to certain locations, and so it's really common for them to appear after you've already cleared out the room, and then everything in Energy occurs on an enormous delay, so once everything is cleared out and the blocks are still there, you just have to mash your face into them for about 10 seconds before they open. You might have noticed that the jumping has a really strange arc in the game. That's because you don't have any momentum in the air. You can just fling yourself around wildly. So it feels pretty bad to control. On some screens, after you defeat all of the enemies, a potion will appear. Red potions fully restore your health, blue potions fully restore your psi power, and thus are totally unnecessary, and which one you get in a given room is completely random. You clear everyone out, and if there's a potion in that room, it's a coin flip on whether it's red or blue. You can wander freely back and forth in Energy, so you might think, aha, this is one of those games that's just like a Nintendo science fiction franchise mashed up with a Konami vampire game. And I guess technically it is. You'll find items that will open additional paths and have to do a little bit of backtracking. This isn't a game with a lot of exploration or special items to collect. After you've made a bit of progress, you'll encounter this box and get your first power-up. You access this screen by hitting select, and here you can choose how rapidly you'll shoot, a few different special effects that could be added to your bullet, and if you're going to use a special item. Special items are activated by pressing buttons 1 and 2 simultaneously. So after a little bit more progress, you rescue this crab monster and he gives you a whistle, and then you double back to this lake that you passed 2 screens before. And then you don't want to fall into the lake because that's instantly fatal. And once you die in energy, it's back to the beginning. You have 1 life and there are no continues. And that's far from the only place where you'll encounter instant death. Of course, going back to the beginning also means sitting through the 3-minute long opening cutscene again. So you've got that to look forward to. If you stand on the shore of the lake and use the whistle, then a sea monster very, very, very slowly rises out of the water, says a few lines, and then very, very slowly goes back into the water with its head out just far enough that you can jump on top of it and be very, very, very slowly carried across the lake. Once you reach the far side, you automatically jump off, and then the sea monster says another line and very, very, very slowly sinks back into the water. Now you might think that this is awfully annoying, but at least you only have to do it once. The whirlpool that's left behind as the monster goes away is a passage that takes you to one of your companions that you're required to save. So rescue them, and then the only way back out is crossing underneath the lake again, so you go back to the far side and get to do the whole sea monster sequence all over again. Isn't energy fun? Past that, there's a passage going down where you have 3 choices and only 1 is correct. And then you have the option of going left or up. If you go up, then you meet this guy who's trapped in the rock, and you have to fight the first boss. You're intended to go left and get a power-up that lets you shoot upward before you take on this boss, but you can dig a very precise jump on top of the block that appears to prevent you from leaving, then climb the vines and jump down while shooting at the face. If you manage to destroy the boss and it goes away, well, everything in energy is on a very long delay, so even though the boss isn't there, he'll still shoot at you a few more times before the fight's over. Now if we go back and head left instead of up, you encounter these monsters that you can't destroy. Well, it turns out you're supposed to get knocked into the air by them. Except it is so precise that it rarely works. And unless somebody told you this was what you were supposed to be doing, you'd be trying to avoid them anyways. If the monster knocks you into the air, then you just keep flying up indefinitely until you hit your head on the ceiling. And there's quite a few things in this long shaft that you can stop at. Now this point's about 15 minutes into the game, but while I was playing, I had to start over multiple times because I died. So this is as far as I got. One of the people up there gives you an item that you have to use on one of the monsters that's up there, though the game doesn't tell you this, you just have to fiddle and figure it out. There's more fun things like an area that rapidly drains your health unless you find the item to prevent it, and that item is hidden inside the area, but the item is easily missable. And another point where the game makes you backtrack all the way to the start of the game in order to continue onward, without giving you any hints that this is what you need to do, of course. If you do manage to beat energy, then your reward is a picture of the hero and his girlfriend, and then it's done. The game immediately cuts from the final boss to the picture, and there's no credits. There's a tagline on the front of the box that says, "Full of danger," and you can't really say that's inaccurate, though the real danger here is playing energy. This is the kind of game that will make you miserable. It takes about an hour to complete the game, but think of all those times that you'd be playing it, get 50 minutes in, and then you just keep getting unlucky with the potions, and suddenly you have to do it all over again. I don't know if Energy is the worst game on the PC Engine, but it is definitely a bottom tier game.